Before we get started on the Dharma talk, please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dearest Venerable Teacher, dear Sangha, good afternoon. So we're going to continue our journey on the Eightfold Path. Today we are on the 7th path. I may have to break this teaching up into at least 2 classes, since it is a pretty long discussion. If I can find my notes. Alrighty, so today we're discussing right mindfulness, or samyak smriti, or samyak sati in Sanskrit. And right mindfulness is essentially it's at the heart of the Buddha's teaching, right? Everything we do in our practice has to revolve around mindfulness. So it's a pretty big deal. Mindfulness is also the word we probably hear most often or learn about most often in Buddhism. Because everything that's done is done with mindfulness. Mindfulness is the key that is able to spring us into the path of enlightenment. It has the ability to shed light on our defilements, on our mindsets, on the way we think and perceive things. And it helps us clearly see things as they are, right? So in the practice of right mindfulness, we are essentially trying to, again, see things as they are, without us applying any of our own perceptions, ideas, or judgments, right? We're taking what we would think about something outside of what we are seeing, right? To see things as they are. But in order for this type of mindfulness to be true mindfulness, to really show us what it is actually capable of, it has to be mindfulness. The mindfulness has to be in the light of truth, right? And that we are able to find this truth through wisdom, right? Through the development of wisdom. And the development of wisdom comes along in our path as we practice. But we have to be able to sustain and hold our mindfulness practices in order to develop concentration, right? Concentration is what is needed to develop our wisdom. But what brings this field of experience into focus and makes it accessible to this insight of enlightenment is this faculty called sati, right, or smriti in Sanskrit, which is the word we usually use for mindfulness, right, or to remember, or to recollect. So mindfulness is to remember to bring ourselves back to the present moment, right, to bring us back into the here and now without the addition of external thoughts and biases and perceptions and adding our own judgments to things. But this is a different kind of mindfulness or consciousness than what we would typically do like in a work setting, right? Because in a work setting we think we are being mindful of what we're doing because we're on task, right? But what we're also doing is multitasking, right? We're multitasking, we're thinking of our past mistakes, we're thinking about what we did wrong or what other people did, and we're also thinking about the future tasks, we're thinking about what we need to do, what other people need to do, what needs to be done, right? There's a whole bunch of clutter, mind clutter in the whole process of mindfulness. So in actual mindfulness, right, this brings us out of that clutterness and brings us to a point of one-pointedness, right? So our mindfulness now is just focusing on one thing at a time as it is in the present moment, right? Watching ourselves in our mind, watch our mental state, and watching the things that are around us. But all judgments and interpretations have to be suspended, right? So if they occur, we just acknowledge them, we drop them, and we let it go. And we continue to go back to our mindfulness practice. There is as I was driving down here, I was thinking of a story. And I'm almost positive it's in this book, but it may not be. Anyway. So I'll have to remember it later, but as we go through, for example, as we go through things, as we go through our life and daily chores or work, right? We may think that we are being present and consciously aware, but what takes us away from what mindfulness is all the projections and ideas we give to the things that we're seeing, right? Because again, mindfulness is paying attention and observing things as they arise, as they happen, right? So seeing things as they are. But what we typically do as humans and as people, we are adding stories to what we're seeing, right? We're adding entertaining thoughts to it. We're adding our own perceptions, our own projections onto things, right? So I always use the example of a car accident, right? People love to rubberneck, right? They have to see what's happening. They have to see who hit who, right? Who's the driver? Are they is it a woman? It's probably a woman. It's probably an old woman, right? It's probably an Asian woman, right? We all have these ideas of why the accident happened. But all this is just imaginary, right? They're delusions. We're making things up, right? We're creating a story from something that we're seeing, but it's not true, right? Maybe some aspects of what we're perceiving may be true, right? Maybe it did end up being a woman. Maybe they are older. Who knows? Who cares? But we have the habit of adding things to what we see, right? But correct mindfulness, true mindfulness, is just observing the accident, acknowledging the accident's there, and just moving on. Who cares who started the accident? Who cares who fender bendered who or what happened, right? It's okay to have the feeling of care, right, and making sure that whoever's in the accident is okay and there's no harm to them, right? That's not a bad thought necessarily, but what creates the bad thought is adding the extra storytelling to that car accident, right? And it could be for anything else, right? We always add things to stories and to things that we see, right? And as we do that, we're habitually adding false projections to certain ideas or certain situations, right? One example that always comes to mind is people's aversion toward homeless people. Right, when we see the homeless or people who are, out begging for money, we always have this negative feeling toward them, right? Some people are like, what are they out here? They look fully capable of working, and they look fully, able to work or to be housed or whatever it is, right? We have this false idea that they are just lazy and incapable, right? And because of that, we have that aversion toward them. We look away. We don't want to help them. We don't want to assist them. We don't care about their story, right? But at the same time, what we think of them is also false, right? These are false perceptions. We don't know what they're going through. We don't know how they became into their situation, right? We don't know how their life may have crumbled, right? They could have lost way more than we can ever imagine having, but we don't know their story. Because we don't know their story, we're adding these false expectations of why we should or should not help them, right? I used to always have change in my car, and I'll give it out whenever I see someone asking for money. I don't care. And I always get bombarded by who's with me. Why are you giving them money? You don't know what they're going to do with it. Exactly. So who cares? It's not your business what they do with it. If you go to a grocery store and you buy groceries and someone randomly asks you, hey, what are you buying? Why are you buying it? How many family members do you have? How much money do you have? Are you going to tell them? No, it's not their business. So why is it your business to wonder what they're going to do with their money? Right? Wondering what they're doing is not helpful. What you're doing is giving, right? You're giving with no expectation of return. That's just being a good person, right? Likewise, when someone wants to help you, right? If you're hurt or needing help or assistance, right? People they come and help. They don't ask, what happened? How'd you get hurt? Who hurt you, right? They ask the questions after the help, right? You don't ask the questions first. Because if you ask questions first and you don't like the answers, then you potentially may not help them, right? So we have to get away from these ideas of adding our own conceptualization, our own projection onto things, and just to see things as they are. Because seeing things as they are for the first time in raw data is all you need to know of the situation. You don't have to add things to it. Adding things to it doesn't help, right? It's one thing to contemplate on things, right? We use contemplation all the time in meditation in our practice. We have to contemplate on the teachings, on the practices, on the Dharma, right? And these are okay thinking, but we can't add our own potential false perceptions and ideas onto these things. And the Buddha calls this process of mental construction papancha, which literally means elaboration or embellishment, right? And these elaborations are what blocks out the presentational immediacy of phenomena, right? They let us know things. They let us know the object only at a distance and not as it really is. And so if we're able to recognize our own ignorance and delusions and greed or anger toward things, right, as they arise, then we can stop ourselves from creating unwholesome mental states, unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome speech, unwholesome actions. And in order to catch these unwholesomeness things, we have to apply the power of mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is, in this case, is noting, right? Making the notations. And we talk about this in our meditation class quite often, right? As you meditate and as you are concentrating on your object of meditation, anything that arises, you make the note of it, right? Any feelings that arise, distractions that arise, you hear a sound, you hear a noise, you smell something, you know, you have a discomfort in your back or knee, you make the notation of the actual thing that happens, that arises, right? Without adding stories to it, right? So if we're sitting in meditation, we hear the door open, we just notate door or sound, right? We don't ask who it is, where they're coming from, why are they late, why are they disturbing my meditation, why are they disturbing the class. We don't ask these questions. It doesn't matter. It doesn't help you. We simply just make the notation of the sound or of the door and continue back to our meditation object. And so the task of right mindfulness here is to clear up all that cognitive fields, right? To bring us back to light the experience in its pure immediacy, to reveal the object as it is before it has been plastered over with conceptual paint, overlaid with all our interpretations and perceptions. So the practice of mindfulness is not a matter of so much of doing, but of undoing, to not think, to not judge, to not associate, to not plan, to not imagine, to not wish, right? Because all of these things are modes of interference, right? They're ways to manipulate our experience and that tries to establish dominance, right? So mindfulness undoes all these knots. It undoes all the tangles of all these doings by simply just noting. But mindfulness also exercises a powerful grounding function, right? It anchors us in the present moment, in the here and now. So it doesn't take us into the past or the future. It doesn't allow us to recollect all our desires or fears or regrets or anything like that, right? But it has mindfulness can facilitate this can facilitate the achievement of both serenity and insight, right? Which is the two aspects of Buddhist meditation, samatha and vipassana, right? Calming of the mind and insight meditation. And so, in either way, we can apply mindfulness to either of these practices. So we have to use mindfulness to develop our concentration, and we use mindfulness to also develop our contemplation piece, right? But we have to learn how to concentrate on our mind steadily and correctly before we can contemplate on things. Otherwise, if we try to truly contemplate on a teaching, for example, and if we're not mastered enough in concentration, then we're just going to be constantly distracted, right? We're constantly going to lose touch with our object of meditation. We're constantly going to be bombarded by external thoughts and feelings and all these distractions, right? So it's very important, which is why we always emphasize the labeling in a meditation class, because labeling over time trains your mind to see things and label things more quickly, right, as they arise. So it's okay to meditate and be distracted, right? There's no problem with being distracted. It's a natural thing that will occur. And so it may take you a few seconds to recognize the distraction. It may take you a few minutes. It may take you the whole session of meditation to acknowledge the distraction. But knowing the distraction is there and observing the distraction, acknowledging the distraction, regardless of how long it took you, is still an accomplishment in your meditation, right? So we need not to be discouraged by how long it takes us to meditate or to bring ourselves back to our meditation object, as long as we do it, right? But as we do it, then we're able to continue developing that mindfulness practice and to a point where we no longer need to label things, right? Labeling is just a training wheels, right? They're like training wheels to help you see things, observe things, recognize things quickly as it arises. But like any other meditation method or technique, they're all really just to help you in your practice. Eventually, just like if you're building a house, for example, you need all the tools. But once your house is built, you no longer need those tools, right? You can store them away, or you can give them to others to help them build their house, right? So our practices, our methods and techniques of meditation is the same way. We can use them until we no longer need them. And so in this case, mindfulness serves as the guard that is charged with the responsibility of making sure that the mind does not slip away from the object of our meditation and lose itself in all these distractions. So right mindfulness is cultivated through a practice called the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. In Pali, that is Chattaro Satipatthana, right? These are the contemplations on four objects of the body, feelings, mind, and objects of mind. So today we'll only be covering probably the first object, which is the contemplation of the body. And the Buddha begins his exposition on the body with the contemplation of the mindfulness of breathing, the anapanasati, right? So mindfulness of breathing is pretty much the root method for all our meditation practices. And any meditation class, any meditation book, any meditation course, mindfulness of breathing is always going to be the foundational teaching, right? We always go back to the meditation of the breath. And the mindfulness of breathing can function effectively as a subject of meditation because it works with a process that is already there, our breath, right? We always have our breath. We can't go anywhere without a breath. If you stop breathing, then you stop living, right? You're dead, which you always can't meditate then. So it allows us to have something to always be able to meditate with, regardless of where we are, right? And then we're able to turn it into a method of meditation by bringing it into our awareness, by bringing it into the light of observation, right? So the Buddha explains that the mindfulness of breathing involves the 4 basic steps, which are the first 4 of the 16 practices in the Anapanasati Sutra, the mindfulness of breathing, right? So the first four exercises is breathing in a long breath, I know that I'm breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, I know I'm breathing out a long breath. Breathing in a short breath, I know I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, I know I'm breathing out a short breath. Bringing it in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my body. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. So these are the first 4 exercises, right? So the first 2, pretty obvious. As you breathe in, you become aware of your breathing, right? We are really meticulously watching our breath as we breathe. And we can use different methods of points of contact when we're breathing. So most traditionally, at least in the discourses, we use the point that's right at the tip of our nose or above our lip, right, where we can feel the air as we breathe, right? So as we breathe in, breathe out, we can feel the air here. Or we can use the feeling, the sensation of our chest or abdomen as it rises or falls, or we can simply just count the breath, right? The point of any of these practices is to give us somewhere to concentrate and focus on as we're breathing, right? To stay with the breath, to stay with our object of meditation. So breathing in, breathing out, you're being aware of your breath. So we're really dissecting the breath in this case, right? We are watching the breath. Is it long? Is it short? Is it shallow? Is it coarse? Are you breathing smoothly, easily, heavily? Right? Is the air cold? Is it warm? You're really just observing the breath, right? That becomes your object of meditation. And then as you go through down the practices, especially in the third practice, I am aware of my whole body, right? So you are adding steps to when you're watching the breath, right? So in the first 2 steps, you're observing just the in and the out. But as you go more deeper into the practice, we're adding a little bit more, adding a few other steps, right? So not only are you watching the in piece, but you're also watching the intermediate, the middle part of the breathing, right? That short pause before you take the next inhale or exhale, right? So you're just pretty much adding another step to it. And then the 4th step is you're calming the whole body, because as you breathe naturally, right, as your body sits and calms down, your breath calms down as well. And the point of these practices is because once we get to like the second foundation here of feelings, we can see that as we're breathing, right, if we're breathing naturally and we're calm, we have no many distractions, and we're just sitting there. But if by chance a distraction does arise, maybe it's someone that you don't necessarily like, right? Someone that causes you to be angry, right? And so as that distraction happens and arises and you start thinking about that person or thinking of what they did to you or what they said, and you just start becoming frustrated, you'll notice that your body starts to tense up a little bit. Your breathing starts to become a little bit heavier or harder, right? And so if we're mindful, if we are correctly mindful of our breathing and watching that breath correctly, then we can see that our breath has changed, right? It's no longer subtle, it's no longer soft and fluid. Now it's coarse, it's heavier, your body's more tensed up, your breathing is a little bit more tense. And at that point, we can then question ourselves, why, right? And then once we're able to question ourselves why this change has happened, and then it hopefully will direct you back to the thoughts of anger or frustration that this imaginary person caused you. And we can also note all of our body's postures and movements, right? So as we sit, we know that we're sitting. As we're walking, standing, or laying down, we know that we're walking, standing, or laying down. If we have to adjust your posture, you know that you're adjusting your posture, right? You sit, you do things with mindfulness. If we're meditating and we're moving, you want to be mindful of the movements, right? You can just make the notes of moving or adjusting, right? And then do it slowly and mindfully. Don't abruptly have to move and look all disgruntled or something, right? Do things softly. And then another exercise of mindfulness of body presents the analytical contemplations intended to expose the body's real nature. This is the meditation on the body's unattractiveness, or the reflections or repulsiveness on the 32 parts of the body. In Pali, this is called the Pati Kulamana Sikara. And this meditation on attractiveness is designed to counter the infatuation with the body, especially in this form of sexual desire. So the Buddha teaches us that the sexual drive is a manifestation of craving, so it causes us to suffer, and it has to be reduced and released as a precondition for bringing suffering to an end. And the meditation aims at weakening sexual desire by depriving the sexual urge of its cognitive perception of the body as sensually alluring. And sensual desire rises and falls together with this perception. So, as we know, this springs up whenever we see someone attractive, right? Or it gets removed when we see something unattractive. And so we have to get away from these sensual desires, right? Because sensual desires are essentially a hindrance, right? A hindrance of greed and desire. And the 32 parts of the body is, I don't have them listed, but they're essentially literally parts of the body. So the hair, the skin, right? Blood and pus and urine and all the bodily function, everything else, right? If we're able to, and they're repulsive, right? They're not attractive, right? So, but when we're able to take away our superficial desires of someone that's unattractive or attractive or unattractive, and see them and ourselves as these repulsive parts of the body, then that helps eliminate the sensual desires and the craving we have for sexual pleasure, which isn't necessarily bad. What is bad is the attachment to it, the attachment to the body and to sexual encounters, right? Which can lead to even more trouble, which we won't go into that today. But using visualization as an aid, one mentally dissects the body into its components and investigates them one by one, bringing the repulsive nature to light. But we have to be a little bit careful in this meditation because it's not meant to produce aversion or disgust or to hate the body or anything like that, but to help us detach from it, to extinguish that fire that's of lust by removing its fuel. Another exercise in mindfulness of the body is called cemetery meditation, or meditation on death, right? It's the contemplation of the body's disintegration after death. And the quote here, or the verse from the discourse, one obtains a clear mental image of a decomposing body and then applies the process to one's own body, considering this body, now so full of life, has the same nature and is subject to the same fate. It cannot escape death, cannot escape disintegration, but must eventually die and decompose. So again, this meditation isn't to scare you off or to hate our bodies, right? Or to indulge in a morbid fascination with death or corpses, but to sever our egotistic clinging to existence, right? To remind us that things are impermanent, right? The big goal of this type of meditation is to recognize impermanence in its true nature. Because that's also one of the facets of our suffering in life is the unacknowledgement of impermanence, right? Which is why we go after things that we desire. We are averse to things that we cling to things that we desire or see as pleasurable, and we push away things that are undesirable or unpleasurable, right? We have this desire to kind of push and pull, push and pull, push and pull. But in the light of mindfulness, and to see things as they truly are, for what they are, right? Taking away all our own perceptions and ideas and formations of them or projections of them, and seeing it as it just being what it is, and recognizing it for what it is, and taking away all our desire for it, all our interpretations on it, then it's easier for us to recognize our desires as being impermanent, which is an important aspect here, because as we know, everything that is composed is impermanent, right? And so if we're able to recognize the fancy car that we want, if we're able to recognize the big house that we want to build, if we recognize the nice, pretty things that we want to own and have and maintain as impermanent, then when they no longer are there, or they break, or they fall away, or they disappear, or pass away, then it's not such a big hit on us, right? Because what happens when we lose a loved one, for instance, when someone passes away, most people get so distraught, right? They're so distressed, they're saddened, they're depressed, right? They are blaming the doctors, they're blaming God, they're blaming whoever it is for their passing, right? And people will get so emotional for a long time, right? Which is okay to be emotional. It's okay to miss the person who has passed. But what's more important is to acknowledge and to accept that passing is a natural phase of life, right? It's impermanent. And so we are so distressed about the death is because we're unprepared for death, right? Part of our unpreparedness is our inability to face the fact of what happens after death, right? It's because we don't know what happens after death is why we fear death in the first place, right? But if we're able to accept that death is a natural state of life, it's a natural process, life is impermanent, and so to be able to love it and be with it and live it in the here and now and in the present, then it's easier to enjoy life, right? Otherwise, most of our days we spend, we're working, we're thinking of what we have to do when we get home, take care of our family, our friends, do this and that, do this and that. We're always thinking what we have to do next, right? Have to do more, have to do this week, have to do this month, this year. Which is okay to be prepared, but it's not okay to obsess over it, right? Because our obsession takes us away from being able to enjoy what we're doing right now, right? If you're home with your family, you're worrying about cooking and about getting your laundry done and getting people ready for school, right? You're taking away being able to just enjoy being with your family, right? So the same thing with anything else in life. If we're able to just chill, enjoy what we're doing in the moment, then it's easier to just be happy with things as they happen, right? That way we don't create expectations. It's a very evil thing, right? Because if we have expectation of, oh, I'm gonna go home and my house is gonna be clean, my husband's gonna take away the laundry, the dishes are gonna be done, and you go home and it's not, now you're yelling, now you're upset, now you're like, fine, well, I'll just do it myself, and now you're silent treatment for the rest of the evening, right? So if you take away your expectations of what you expect to happen, whether it's in your life or from other people, then when it doesn't happen, then you're not so distraught about it, right? You're able to accept things as they are. But to do that, we have to shine the light of mindfulness on these things. Just, okay, if it didn't happen, there's nothing you can do about it. Why are you angry? Dishes aren't going to be done. That's fine, cool, whatever. You don't eat. Laundries are done. You're wearing the same underwear 5 days a week. Who cares, right? It's not your problem. Well, as a parent, it's your problem. But you know what I'm saying, right? Makes sense? Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now. I meant to get through at least the first two establishments, but that clearly didn't happen. Okay, what are your questions, concerns, emotional outbursts? I knew this was going to be a long topic. The last two, this component of the path and then the last one, right concentration, are also pretty long. So I'm going to have to stretch those out. But the concentration piece, I'm going to try to summarize that because that's basically our entire meditation class. So I'll try not to be as detailed. Come to a meditation class if you need details. Anyway, no questions, concerns? Alrighty, and then we will transfer the merit and go into chanting. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. For any positive karmic action we've accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. We'll be chanting the 25th chapter of the Lotus, page 253. Speech and mind in perfect oneness, I send my heart along with the sound of the. May the hearers awaken from forgetfulness and transcend all anxiety and sorrow. Listen, listen, this wonderful sound brings me back to my true home. Gratitude we offer this incense to all Buddhas and Bodhisattvas throughout space, and may it be fragrant as earth herself, reflecting our careful effort, our wholehearted mindfulness, and the fruit of understanding slowly ripening. May we and all beings become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May we awaken from forgetfulness and realize our true home. Incense in the censer now is burning, all the Dharma realm in every place
auspicious clouds appear. Our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect body, homage to the incense cloud canopy, Bodhisattva and great Bodhisattvas. To the eternally abiding Buddhas, the supreme Dharma and sagely sangha throughout the Dharma realm of empty space and 3 periods of time. To the fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha, Maitreya, honored future Buddha, Manjushri, great wisdom Bodhisattva, Conduct Bodhisattva, whole Dharma guarding Deva Bodhisattva, and the glorious mountain assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. To Amitabha Buddha in the land of ultimate bliss, Avalokiteshvara, great compassion Bodhisattva, great strength Bodhisattva, earth store, great vow Bodhisattva, assembly of great pure seeming Bodhisattva. Sori Maha Sori So Sori Swaha Om Sori Sori Maha Sori So Sori Swaha Om Sori Sori Maha Sori So Sori Swaha. Oh, great compassion in Buddhas and Bodhisattvas now. Passion in Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo, great compassion in Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Natrayaya. So sattva namo vastava namo vakamavitatu tadyatha om avaloke lokate karate hiri mahabodhisattva mara mahi hridayam koro karmam doro vijate mahavijate dara dirini shvaraya chala mama vimala muktalehi shina Vishram Prashaya Holo Mara Holo Hri Sara Siri Soro Bodhiya Bodhaya Maitreya Narakendi Shanina Vayamana Swaha Siddhaya Swaha Mahasiddhaya Swaha Siddhayoge Shvaraya Swaha Narakendi Swaha Maranara Swaha Sira Simha Mokaya Swaha Sarva Mahasiddhaya Swaha Chakra Siddhaya Swaha Padmakastaya Swaha Narakendi Vagadaya Swaha Mavari Sankaraya Swaha Namo Ratnatrayaya Namo Arya Valokite Shavaraya Swaha Om Siryanto Mantra Padaya Swaha Dharma body is bringing morning light and concentration. My heart is at peace. A smile is born on my lips. This is a new day and I vow to go through in mindfulness. The sun of wisdom has risen, shining in every direction. Noble Sangha, diligently bring your to meditation. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Namo Shakyamunaye Bodhaya. Unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true me. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Namo Lotus assembly of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Time the Bodhisattva inexhaustible serpent immediately rose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, pressed his palms together, and facing the Buddha spoke these words. Third one, this Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds. Why is he called perceiver of the world sounds? The Buddha said to Bodhisattva, inexhaustible intent, good men, suppose there are immeasurable hundreds and 10,000s, millions of living beings who are undergoing various trials and suffering. If they hear of this Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and single-mindedly call his, then at once he will perceive the sound of their voices, and they will all gain deliverance from their trials. If someone holding fast Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sound, should enter a great fire, the fire could not burn him. This would come about because of this Bodhisattva's authority. Supernatural power. If one were washed away by a great flood and call upon his name, one would immediately find himself in a shallow. Suppose there were 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million living beings who seeking for gold, silver, lapis lazuli, seashell, agate, coral, amber, pearls, and other treasures, set out on the great sea. And suppose a fierce wind should blow their ship, and it drifted to the land of Rakshasa demons. If among those people there is even just one who calls the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the worlds, all those people will be delivered from their troubles with the Rakshas. This is why he is called perceiver of the world sounds. If a person who faces imminent threat of attack should call the name of Bodhisattva of the world sounds, and the swords and staves wielded by his attackers would instantly shatter into so many pieces, and he would be delivered, though enough yakshas and rakshasas to fill all billionfold worlds should try to come and torment a person. If they hear him calling the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and these evil demons will not even be able to look at him with their evil eyes, much less to suppose there is a person who, whether guilty or not guilty, has had his body in prison, in fetters and chains, cage and lock. If he calls the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world, all his bonds will be severed and broken, and at once he will gain deliverance. Suppose in a place filled with all the evil-hearted bandits of the 1,000,000,000-fold world, there is a merchant leader who is guide. Band of merchants carrying valuable treasures over a steep and dangerous road, and that one man shouts out these words, good men, do not be afraid, you must single-mindedly call on the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver. This This Bodhisattva can grant fearlessness to living beings. If you call his name, you will be delivered from these evil-hearted bandits. When the band of merchants hear this, they all together raise their voices, saying, Namo Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and because they call it, they are at once able to gain deliverance. Inexhaustible intent, the authority and supernatural power of the Bodhisattva and Mahas, perceiver of the world sounds, are as mighty as this. If there should be living beings beset by numerous lusts and cravings, reverence a Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and then they can shed their desires. If they have great wrath and anger, let them think with constant reverence a Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and then they can shed their anger. If they have great ignorance and delusion, let them think with constant reverence a Bodhisattva, perceiver of the worlds. They can have ignorance, inexhaustible intent. The Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, possesses great authority and supernatural powers, as I have described, and confer many benefits. For this reason, living beings should constantly keep the thought of him in. If a woman wishes to give birth to a male child, she should offer obeisance and alms to Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and then she will bear a son blessed with Mary. And if she wishes to bear a daughter, she will bear one with all the marks of comeliness, one who in the past planted the roots of virtue and is loved and respected by many persons. Inexhaustible intent, the Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, has power to do all. If there are living beings who pay respect and obeisance to Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, their good fortune will not be fleeting or vain. Therefore, living beings should all accept and uphold the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world. Inexhaustible intent, suppose there is a person who accepts and upholds the names of as many Bodhisattvas as there are sands in 62 million Ganges, and for as long as he offers them alms in the form of food and drink, clothing, bedding, and medicines. What is your opinion? Would this good man or good benefits, or would he not? Inexhaustible intent replied, they would be very many. World honored one, the Buddha says, suppose also there is a who accepts and upholds the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, and even just once offers him obeisance and alms. A good fortune gained by these two persons would be exactly equal and without difference. For 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million kalpas, it would never be exhausted or run out. Inexhaustible, and if one accepts and upholds the name of Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, he will gain the benefit of merit and virtue that is as immeasurable and boundless as this Bodhisattva. Inexhaustible intent said to the Buddha, world honor Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, how does he come and go in the Saha world? How does he preach the law for the sake of living being? How does the power of expedient means apply in this case? The Buddha said to Bodhisattva, inexhaustible living beings in the land who need someone in the body of a Buddha in order to be saved. Bodhisattva, perceiver of the world sounds, immediately manifests himself in a Buddha body and preaches the law for them if they need someone in. Pray take a Buddha's body in order to be saved. Immediately he manifests. Pray take a Buddha's body and preaches the law. If they need a voice hearer to be saved, immediately he becomes a voice hearer and preaches the law for them. If they need King Brahma to be saved, immediately he becomes King Brahma and preaches the law. If they need the Lord Shakta to be saved, immediately he becomes the Lord Shakta and preaches the law for them. If they need heavenly being freedom to be saved, immediately he becomes a heavenly being freedom and preaches the law for them. If they need the heavenly being great freedom to be saved, immediately he becomes a heavenly being great freedom and preaches the law. They need a great general of heaven to be saved, immediately he becomes a great general of heaven and preaches the law for them. If they need Vaishnavana to be saved, immediately he becomes Vaishnavana